welcome back to All Rise. It's Abdu again. It's Derek again. We're finally back in the same room. It's been a while.
It has been.
We've had many adventures in between the last time we sat down in here and did that. But we're both so busy and popular and well known.
We destroyed the One Ring.
Yes.
Save the world. You're welcome.
Yes. I can't carry it for you, Abdu, but I can carry you.
Oh my goodness. I have chills. I'm inspired right now.
Good.
That is one of my favorite scenes in that movie, and of course.
It's such a good scene, such a great line.
Yeah.
But I will say, so one of the things I did was I was in Arizona and the Phoenix area, so I got to see the Southwest for the first time. Really beautiful. I loved it. Everything I saw was like, oh, this is like in a Western. The mountains were Western mountains. The cacti everywhere, like everywhere. But one of the things that happened there, so first, let me just say, as everyone already knows from the title of this episode, we are answering viewer questions,
Right.
that we got in through various different platforms.
Yeah.
And here's our first bit of trivia, because while I was there for my brother-in-law, my wife's brother's wedding, I met his bride's father, who is Sicilian. And he told me something about marinara sauce that I didn't know.
Oh.
Now, what is in marinara sauce? Go. What is marinara sauce?
It's just tomato sauce. It's just a sauce that goes on pasta.
Well, here's what I learned. Over there, it's got fish in it. And it's right in the name. Marine marinara sauce. This blew my mind.
Wow.
When I heard this, and I was like, I didn't know that, and I also never want that. I'm not a big fish guy myself.
But so I've had sauces in Italy and in Malta, which is Italy, sort of. And I don't recall the fish being in it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it's probably the kind of thing where it's like real Caesar dressing has bits of anchovy in it,
right?
And you notice, but you don't
has
notice.
Bits of Caesar in it.
Yeah, little bits of Kings. Yeah, chopped up emperors.
Yeah, yeah. And he also mentioned that you would never have meatballs on top of spaghetti; that those would be two different dishes. So also blew my mind.
Wow. See that what's the phrase? I was today years old when I found out all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's wow. So don't ever say that you don't learn anything on this show.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned it because I was hoping one of the viewers would actually send in that question and I could look really smart, but no one did. So everyone kind of let me down.
We tend not to answer culinary questions.
Yeah. Well, they should. We talk about food a lot, though.
We do.
I feel like they should be asking,
especially in the office.
Yeah,
food comes up in an unhealthy amount of times.
Well, it comes up at least once a day.
Yeah,
for lunch.
Yeah. All right.
So anyway, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the actual questions.
Some serious
questions.
Let's stop. Yeah.
Because we got a lot of good ones here. We're recording all this at once. This will probably be 2 episodes, and we need to do another one.
Yeah.
Just to cover the other questions, because we like to cover in depth.
Yeah.
We like to dive in, and so just remember, you asked for this.
Yeah.
So.
You quite literally, they asked for it,
because you asked for it.
Not only did you tune in, but these are your questions.
And what's your thing about apologetics? Sometimes it's
it's transformed from the art and science of Christian persuasion into the art of making someone sorry they asked.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's
hopefully not this time.
Let's test that today.
Yeah, let's push it.
But the first one comes from Chris, and it's on the nature of evil. So his question was this. When Christians try to define evil, I've heard it said that evil is not a thing, but rather a lack of good. So while God did create good, he didn't create evil. Instead, evil is what we have when there is no good. I think that this definition works some of the time, but there seems to be evil acts that are more than just an absence of good. Take, for example, someone who walks up to a 5-year-old stranger in a playground and basically kills them. Clearly an evil act, but also it seems to be more than something coming from a lack of good. Ironically, it may take something away from the biblical view of evil to say that evil is simply the lack of good. Lack of good doesn't sound too bad. But if you say that an act is 100% evil, there's nowhere to hide. That is 100% bad news. It's not sort of, well, it's philosophically it's kind of bad, but it's, how do you think this fits in with the biblical view of evil? Thank you for taking the time to consider my question.
Before you start, I really like the way he asked this question. And one of the things that struck me as you were reading it out loud was that this idea of evil simply being a lack of good sort of makes it tame.
Right.
And actually takes away from a biblical view, which treats evil so seriously. So we do have this tension of philosophically defining evil and biblically remaining faithful to what the text actually says, which I think speaks to our common experience of evil as simply not being someone who didn't do the right thing. They did something bad, actually.
Right.
And it's an important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And hopefully we'll be able to make sense of this as we go through of like what is the distinction being made, and how does it apply to the text? How does it not apply to the text?
Yeah.
So I wanted to just start with a little biblical background. Why do people even begin to say something like this to begin with? And it comes from the notion of the character of God, which is good. God is love. God is good. There is no evil in him. And what can a God like that create?
Right.
And that's not just us speculating. I'll take it directly from the text itself. Most people are familiar with Genesis 1. All throughout Genesis 1, everything God's created is good or very good. And at one point, all experience on the earth was based on that. Everything is good. Evil has not entered creation yet.
Right.
So if that's an ideal, then the ideal is good. And in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 3 through 4, he says, "Through the word all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind." So there's no darkness. And when he's talking about in him, the word, of course, he's talking about Christ. In the first epistle of John, chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, he says, "This is the message which we have heard from him and declare to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have communion with him and walk in darkness," which you could say is sin, evil, "we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have communion with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his son, cleanses us from all sin." And so then we jump. So if we start at Genesis, let's jump all the way to the end, to the sort of restored, or the new heavens and the new earth. And it's described as, there's no longer any sea in chapter 21, verse 1, or there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. That's chapter 21, verse 4. And the idea of there being no sea in the Hebrew mind was that the sea was this place of darkness and chaos. The depths, they also, often refer to the depth as like that of Hades, or the place where demons dwelled and things like that. And so the sea somehow sort of embody that. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be water anymore,
right?
Bodies of water necessarily,
right?
It's sort of using it in that sort of sense of the way they understood the sea as chaos. And when Jesus is crossing over to the land of the Gerasenes or the Gadarenes, however you phrase that, the sea is where it gets whipped up, and he has to rebuke the sea,
right?
And all that. So there's this connection between,
and we have
evil,
it now.
Chaos,
because of that imagery, we have ideas of like tossed to and fro by the waves of the sea,
right,
or a sea on an infinite, awash on a sea of infinite nothing, kind of a thing. The sea isn't always it's sometimes used as a symbol for bad stuff or chaotic things or uncertainty. Yeah.
But the point is, in the end, all the evil, all darkness will be gone. So the ideal originally was that. The ideal we'll get to is that. So it seems like God wants no evil in the world.
But we have something in the scriptures that suggests that he creates that.
Right. Isaiah 45:7 states, "The Lord is speaking." He says, "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things."
Yeah.
So Is there a contradiction in the Bible?
Well,
Or
and I think the answer is definitely no, especially when you understand the context. All texts have to be read in their context, lest they become a proof text for a pretext, as the statement goes. So you take this in the context, and the text like these always come in this context, and this is in the context of God's goodness and His love, but also in terms of His judgment. Isaiah 45:7, translated in a proper way, could actually read something along the lines of, I bring judgment upon those who deserve judgment for their wickedness. In other words, I create evil. Isn't that He creates something that is the privation of good. I create a corruption of the good.
He doesn't create a thing called evil, and now
Right.
evil exists in the world.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
He creates he creates good. He makes peace. But also when you violate that, when you do something that is the corruption of the good, He brings judgment. And to those who are doing the corrupting, it feels evil. It feels like something bad. It feels like something terrible because they think they're right. They think they're justified, or maybe they delight in the evil itself.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they feel the consequences of it, they seem to feel this evil. One other thing about this verse that I thought was interesting is He forms the light and creates darkness. Darkness is simply the absence of light.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it is. And varying degrees of shadow. You know, we have shadows in this office, in this studio. There's lights everywhere that are casting shadows and creating. Some of those shadows are harsh and they're stark, and some of those shadows are soft, depending on how much light actually gets through. So darkness is just simply the absence of evil. So what this verse is actually saying is that God forms the light. He is the light, and the whole corpus of Scripture is that God is the source of all light, and therefore anything that occludes Him, anything that occludes the good, is therefore bad. So God creates conditions where darkness can exist, which means He also creates conditions where evil can exist because free will exists. And free will, which is an essential good, when perverted, results in evil. So God doesn't create the evil, He creates the conditions where the good can be corrupted, and therefore evil can exist. So even if this verse was read literally, it's that He forms the light and creates the darkness. He creates the conditions where darkness can exist. He creates peace, and He creates the conditions, like free will, where evil can exist. But what we perceive as the consequences of our misdeeds, we perceive them as evil, but they're actually good things because they're judgments.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis gave the illustration in, I think it was in Mere Christianity, where he was kind of describing this idea, and he mentioned, it's like a mother who wants her children to learn responsibility, so she lets them her children in their room play with their toys, and then she says, when you're done, you need to clean up your room, or I think maybe or you don't get dessert or something.
Yeah.
And of course, what she wants them to do is clean up their room
and get dessert.
And that would be best for them. But if they don't, that's not because her will was for them to not do that. Nonetheless, her will for them to freely choose the good allowed for that relative evil to take place.
Yeah, and in their childishness, they see it as evil. It's like, how could you be so cruel as to dangle the word ice cream in front of us and then rip it from us?
Right.
Well, I'm actually offering you something that you didn't have before.
Right.
And had you done this thing, you had gotten it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. The word disaster sounds evil all the time, like disaster. We never think of that in a positive way, right? But something can bring disaster. They brought disaster on themselves, or this whole thing brought disaster, or God brings disaster as judgment. So don't always think of these words in these univocal ways. Most words are equivocal and analogical, and the Bible's full of those. And in this sense, this passage of Scripture uses it equivocally, the word evil equivocally and analogically.
Yeah. So then with that in mind of sort of, okay, character of God and what a God of that character can create, we understand a bit of why some of the early Christians were attempting to describe this reality, and especially when they're in the milieu of Manichaeans and people of other religious persuasions that were saying God actually does create evil. He create, there's got to be this balance of good and evil, and or some other worldview version of or a dualistic thing.
Right.
And so they're in this milieu, and they're trying to stand up for the character of God. So what they're doing to Chris's question, when they say evil is not a thing, they're making a metaphysical distinction.
Right.
They're not saying it's not real in your life. That they're saying it has no being, it has no essence. David Bentley Hart called it an ontological wasting disease.
Yeah, I love that phrase.
It's not something God created. It doesn't have life in itself. And the reality of it is real. The consequences of it are real. You feel it. It's a real thing. It's not minimizing evil in your life when it happens. It's just making a metaphysical distinction that gives you, I think, reason to continue to trust the God who created the world, even though evil has come into the world.
Right. Yeah. And I think that even the way Chris had asked the question is to understand that it does do violence to the biblical understanding of evil if you have this sterile understanding of evil is simply the lack of good.
Right.
What they mean classically, as you just explained, and I think we can, with certain analogies, actually explain it further, is that God is the source of all of existence. He is the grounding of all existence. He's not a being among beings. He is the source of all being.
Right.
So he is the necessary being. And because he is the seat of goodness, therefore, everything that is has ontological rooting and grounding is in him. And evil is the corruption, is the perversion of that which is intended. It is the corruption and the perversion of that which has its own ontological grounding. What I mean by that is ontology is just simply a fancy way of saying the state of being, or what is the thing in its nature, what is the nature of things. So evil doesn't have its own ontology. It doesn't have an independent ontology. It only exists as the parasite or the privation or the corruption of that which does have grounding, which is goodness, because goodness is rooted in God, and God is the necessary being from which all other beings derive their existence. So evil doesn't have its own essence, its own being, and so it depends on goodness to exist. But notice, goodness does not depend on evil to exist.
Right.
Goodness depends on God to exist. But because God is the good, then good, in a sense, necessarily exists. Right. But evil does not necessarily exist. It could have been otherwise. To think of it this way, a good analogy is rust on a vehicle or on a piece of metal. The metal exists, and the rust is the corruption of it. But can we say that thing is rust? It isn't actually a thing in and of itself. It is the condition of the metal once it's been corroded by oxidation and by the forces around it, like the water and salt. And, here we live in Michigan. We're quite familiar with the rust factor on our cars. But there's rust on our cars. That's a thing. That's really a real condition of our cars. But the rust isn't actually a thing, because you can't actually you can remove the rust by excising it from the car, just like necrotic flesh on someone. You debride that, you get rid of it, but and it's real, but it's really just lifeless flesh. It's not dead in the sense that it's dead flesh is a thing. It's that flesh without life is a thing, so to speak. So you can remove it, but you can't really restore the rust. You can't take the rust and make that rusted thing the perfect metal it once was. Spiritually, however, in the Christian faith, you can actually do that.
Right.
Which is the beauty of the whole thing, is that God, who is the seat of all goodness, can actually restore that which has been rusted. Now, I want to make sure we understand something. This is not an essential. This is not a dogma upon which Christian orthodoxy hangs, that this idea that evil is the privation of good, or that God does not create things that are evil. I think biblically speaking, it's consistent that God does not create evil. However, you're not going to lose your salvation or be excommunicated from churches because you have more of a different view on these things, or you're not even sure what
Or you're
these
just
things mean.
uncomfortable with saying
Yeah.
evil is a privation, and maybe
Right.
you felt it in your life, and you're like, I just can't say that.
Right. And I can
From
say
I
from
can't say
even
that.
experiencing it in my own life very recently,
Yeah.
not just discomfort, but actual evil. I understand why people bristle at the idea that evil is simply the privation of good, but properly understood philosophically and theologically, it's more than just the lack of something. It's the corruption of it,
Yeah.
which makes it worse
Yeah.
in many ways. So it's real, but it's not the way it was intended to be, which gives us hope.
Yeah, yeah, kind of, and we kind of talked before too, but the way you can corrupt a house by burning it down,
Yeah.
that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And there's ashes there
Mhm.
that was once a house. That's a
Yeah.
real thing that happened,
Yeah.
even if it's you view it in this absence way.
Yeah.
But one of the we kind of this view actually, and I would just say to anyone who is, if you're uncomfortable with it for personal reasons, then that's fine. But if you're just sort of uncomfortable, as I once was, the first time I heard about this in a class I was taking from Holly Ordway, actually, um, uh, it took me a while to come around to understand what they're saying, because my emotions were sort of in the way at first, and I was like, I don't know about this, but it just sort of I would just encourage everyone to spend some time with and understand what it is actually trying to say versus not. Hopefully this helps. And one theologian that a lot of Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox,
Oh,
a lot of
you need a T in there, and then you'll have copped.
yeah. Well, we can't. Yeah, that gives too much to just one of the groups. That, transhumanists. No, we won't include them.
Not yet.
But they, Augustine of Hippo, so who's someone who pretty much everyone likes. But he talked about this, so I thought just a quote from him and kind of saying, this is within the realm of Christian orthodoxy. He said, all of nature, therefore, is good, since the creator of all nature is supremely good. But nature is not supremely and immutably good, as is the creator of it. Thus, the good in created things can be diminished and augmented. For good to be diminished is evil. Still, however much it is diminished, something must remain of its original nature as long as it exists at all. And he also said, evil has no positive nature, but the loss of good has received the name evil. And that kind of reminded me too of, we've talked before about what God can and can't do, and why doesn't he just create more gods like him, and how that's like why doesn't he just create perfect human beings, and how that's kind of a category error, because if God were able to create something just like him, that thing he created wouldn't be God,
and it wouldn't need to be created,
right?
Yeah, a perfect being doesn't need to be created. Doesn't need anything, in fact. So you can't have multiple created beings. You can't have created perfect beings,
right?
In that sense.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, and I don't want to cut you off, but I think that what's important here too is to remember to come back to, this is a moral question, which means that when you're asking the question, whether it's being asked here in a purely curious sense, or it's going to be asked in the existential sense, where like, okay, I've been touched by evil now, you would not comfort someone by saying what you're experiencing right now is simply the privation of good.
Right.
It's just not going to work. And please don't do that, because it's going to render the whole thing philosophical, and it'll actually sterilize what is not meant to be a sterile experience. And it's supposed to be lived and understood. At some point when we're wrestling with these issues, a little more on a distant level, we can talk through the depth of what it actually means for something to be the privation of good. Is that evil is not what was meant to be.
Right.
It is the corruption of what is meant to be. And so what you're feeling when you feel that sense of loss because of the evil, you're actually feeling a tug at what was meant to be. And so that means that the thing you're feeling, that whatever evil took from you or robbed you of or impacted you by, you're feeling the yearning you're supposed to feel for something which is good. And the good news is the Christian faith actually says that evil was turned on its head on a cross. What you meant for evil, the Apostle Peter says, God used to bring about the very salvation of the people who were doing the evil in the first place. So evil is real, but it's not what was meant to be. And the cross is the ultimate demonstration as to that which is corrupt was turned into something that can be salvific, and what is sown, our bodies, which are sown in corruption in the ground, will be raised incorruptible.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate message of comfort,
Yeah.
not a philosophical response.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for those interested in sort of the comparative worldview notion of this, C.S. Lewis's problem of pain, kind of, to talk about.
Oh yeah.
You talk about specifically the evil not being what was supposed to be, and that's what this saying evil is the privation of good. It's essentially saying it's not what was supposed to be. It wasn't created like this. That's one of the things that that makes evil, suffering, pain a problem only in Christianity,
Right.
which is actually a good thing. Everyone else that brings it up, it's like, well, within your worldview, you can't really say it's a problem. And so we'll leave that there for now. If anyone's interested in hearing more, we can go into it.
It's a discomfort
Yeah.
at most.
It's a discomfort, but not a design flaw, not.
Right, because there is no design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll actually get to that a little bit later.
We will.
when
We
talk
will. I'm
about
looking
Julian
forward to
Baggini. Yeah.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the show. And before we go any further, I just want to say this. If you're watching this and enjoying the conversation, we'd love for you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss future episodes. Now, believe it or not, about 90% of the people who watch our videos aren't subscribed. And if just a fraction of you hit that button, it would make a huge impact for us. It's one simple, totally free way to support our ministry and help others discover thoughtful Christian content in a culture full of conflict, one that's searching for meaning. So go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. It really does help us out. And now, back to the content.
Let's go to this question, which I titled "The Quran's Immaculate Conception," but this question from at 24 Oak Raiders on YouTube. He wrote in response to our Quran episode with Andy Bannister. He said, "The claim that many Muslims don't read the Quran is false. Over 30 million people today have memorized it. As for his comment about the Quran being compiled, he ignored an important fact. The Quran is a verbal revelation. It was memorized by the Prophet and his companions during his lifetime. When the written text was compiled after his death, it was based on what was already widely memorized. The companions, who were known for their integrity and closeness to the Prophet, ensured the accuracy of the compiled Quran, and any practicing Muslim knows this." Now keep in mind, this was his follow-up question to a comment.
Yeah.
Where
It wasn't really a question.
it wasn't really a question, it's a comment. I don't think there was any punctuation. I'm assuming it was just a statement. He just said, because it was you, Andy, and myself, and he responded to 3 idiots.
That was the whole thing.
Which I loved. And which I was like, and you mentioned we're all big fans of the 3 Amigos. So to be 3 anything.
Yeah, exactly.
One for each other and all for one.
Yeah.
The 3 idiots are we. So
We are the 3
idiots.
idiots.
Okay.
Anyway.
You can tell we did not plan that because the timing was all off.
Plus, you don't want to hear me sing anyway.
Right.
But
That's,
having said that,
anyway.
you asked him to follow up. And
Yeah.
Would you clarify
Yeah.
what you mean by 3 idiots? And
Yeah.
that's what the question was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something. Yeah. Is it just ad hominem or do you have an actual critique? So,
Yeah.
that was his question. So the first question of this would just be, I found it hard to believe. I don't know how. I mean, over 30 million people today have memorized the Quran. Is that the whole Quran? Is that just we've memorized, like every Christian? There might be 30 million Christians that know John 3:16. I wouldn't say 30 million Christians have memorized the New Testament or the Bible or anything. So what's he talking about? Is that true?
Yeah. Well, and it depends on what you mean by memorized, because I've heard people say, based on my ability to, spout off certain scriptures verbatim, that I've memorized the Bible. Well, I certainly haven't memorized the Bible. Certainly haven't done that. But I've memorized parts of it. So I don't know what he means exactly. But let's say he means the entire thing. Because in Islam, it is considered a great feat to memorize the entire thing. And there are people who spend their time and go to schooling learning how to memorize the entire Quran. So that isn't impossible. There are people who do that. The question is whether there are 30 million of them. Now, a couple of things on this. One, I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anybody knows. I've done some research on this since we saw this claim, and I will tell you, I have found no credible evidence, no credible sources that have done any kind of a census kind of data that says this number of people who are Muslims or non-Muslims for that matter have memorized the entire Quran. So to say the number 30 million seems like an arbitrary thing. It just sounds like he said it because he said it, maybe because somebody else said it. Now, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm saying I find no data to back it up. And if you have data to back it up, please provide such, because I would love to know it. Now, let's say the answer, let's say it was true. It doesn't matter. 30 million. First of all, 30 million out of how many Muslims in the world? Okay, so depending on who you ask, because the number does differ depending on who you ask, and when you ask it, it goes from 1 billion to 1.5 to 1.8 to almost 2 billion. It kind of fluctuates. But the point is, there's a lot. Yeah. There's clearly more than 1 billion, and there's probably way more than 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. Now, we take 30 million of them, okay? 1% of 1 billion is 10 million. Okay, so this is far less than 3% of all Muslims in the world have memorized the Quran who live now. Yeah. Far less than 3%. So that leaves 97% of the Muslims in the world who haven't memorized it. So this claim sounds like a big number. It's not that big of a number.
Well, and that was your claim, wasn't it? Like you didn't say no one reads the Quran.
Right. What the claim was is that many Muslims don't read the Quran. Yeah. I didn't even say most. I said many. So if there is 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, and let's say 10% of them, just 10% have never read the Quran, that's a lot. That's many.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was saying. But the reality is many of them know certain texts. I think I said it even in the episode. They know Fatiha, they know Al-Ikhlas, they know certain of the short chapters of the Quran.
Yeah. Well, we all know those, yeah.
Pardon?
Well, we all know those.
Yeah. Yeah,
of course.
So, yeah, of course. But a lot of them know those because that's very common to know those. Just like Christians know John 3:16 and maybe even some longer passages of the Bible.
Not judge.
Yeah, exactly. The ones that they misquote all the time. So
women be silent. That's a big one.
There's quite a few that a lot of people know. Half of.
Yeah.
Exactly. But for the point of this is that he was saying we're 3 idiots because we claim that many Muslims don't read the Quran, and that's false. I stand by it. Many Muslims don't read the Quran. I lived in a Muslim community. I know for a fact many of the Muslims I knew and many of those I encountered outside of my community and other communities know parts of it but haven't read it and are shocked sometimes when they see some things that are in it as well. So I stand by the whole many. Even if 30 million people today have memorized it, which is an unsubstantiated number, that's less than 3%, and it doesn't even matter because that doesn't mean that most people who are Muslims have read it. Yeah. Most people who are Muslims don't even speak Arabic. If they have memorized parts of it for the purposes of the rakat when they pray or whatever other reasons, they don't know what they're saying, or they've been told that's what the translation is in your language, but they don't know the whole Quran. And if they do know the whole Quran, all they know is the sounds. They don't know what it says. They have to have it translated for them. So this is an overly simplistic response to our statement, and it's an overly and that's actually just factually not even true. Yeah, the way it's worded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then to the second question, there is a lot of confusion, it seems like, over the early history of the Quran. A lot of it's being sort of unearthed. Yeah. Now, a lot of it is in texts that have been ignored. You have an interesting story about someone who had one of these texts framed, and then found out what was in it.
Yeah, yeah. So we talk about Sahih Bukhari. So the sacred texts in Islam are the Quran, which is the pinnacle sacred text, of course, the infallible Quran according to Muslims. And then there are the hadith, which are the sayings and the stories about the Prophet Muhammad, which are recorded in various hadith traditions, Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Tirmidhi, Suyuti. There's various different hadith collections as well. Bukhari is one of the most trusted. And the text we're talking about is there was a particular Muslim who had a volume, all the volumes of Bukhari they had the bindings were beautiful decorated. So it all said, when you put it together, it all looked like a picture of in script of the Sahih al-Bukhari at the back. It was gorgeous. It was a beautiful decoration. And this person went to go read some of it and went into the hadiths that talk about the Qur'an itself and the history behind the Qur'an, and said, I have to throw this away. This is completely nonsense. This is not how it was compiled, because the hadith books tell a much more complex story than this question makes it sound like. I mean, look at the question. The question basically says that the Quran was verbal revelation. Okay, it's fine. It's verbal. It was memorized by the Prophet. Okay, sure, maybe. And his companions during his lifetime. Let's assume that. When the written text was compiled after his death, this is the simplistic part, it was based on what was already memorized, and the companions, who were known for their integrity and closeness to the Prophet, ensured the accuracy of the compiled Quran.
Right.
That is hyper simplistic.
Okay.
And he says, this is interesting, any practicing Muslim knows this. I would beg to differ, sir. Every practicing Muslim believes this,
Right.
but they don't know this. There's a difference. Here's why. So here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Let's not take my word for it that this is a hyper simplistic understanding of the history of the Quran. Let's take a Muslim's words for it. Let's go to a prominent Muslim voice that most of the Muslim world who does engages in any kind of apologetics with regard to Islam and Christianity would know. And it's none other than Shabir Ali, who is a scholar, who is a debater, and who understands these things. He was asked on his show, Let the Quran Speak, how we got the Quran in the first place. And he points out that it is a hyper simplistic view to say what this guy said in his question. So let's hear from him, not me.
Welcome back. Now we'll take your questions. If you have a question yourself, send it to us at QuranSpeaks.com. So actually, the question today is about the validity of a Quran. Someone wrote, I'm a devout Muslim, reverted to Islam from Christianity 10 years ago. Recently, they came across your debate that you had with Jay Smith, where he mentions the different Qur'ans found across the globe, such as Uzbekistan and Topkapi, etc. And he makes mentions that there are some versions that are not complete and seem to believe that there are differing Qur'ans, and as a result may not be alike in content. So the viewer is asking for your perspective and response on that.
Many Muslims just simply have this the simplistic idea that there has only been one version of the Quran throughout history, and that's the version that we're holding now. And when we read our history, we see, in fact, that there were variations, multiple readings that were sanctioned, the multiple readings that are sanctioned in our tradition, and they do not know how to come to grips with that. It's a large subject. It takes a whole book to describe this in detail, but I'll try to make sense of it very, very quickly in the limited time that we have. The Quran was revealed to our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by the angel Gabriel. He recited that to his companions, but apparently he didn't recite it just one way. He might have recited it in a multiple of ways to make it easy for various companions to grasp the message and to transmit that to their followers as well, and to various tribes who spoke a variety of Arabic dialects. So almost you can have a translation. As you might have a translation from Arabic to English, you can also have a translation from Arabic to Arabic, because not all Arabic is the same.
And at the time it was oral tradition, right?
It was oral tradition. And then the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, themselves may have allowed some latitude when they taught the Quran to others, because people couldn't pronounce the words exactly. They allowed them to pronounce a variety so long as the main meaning was captured and the message was not distorted. But of course, God guided the early Muslims to put some kind of limits on this process, so that the Quran would not go out of control, but the original message would be retained and passed down to us throughout the generations as we have it now intact as the Word of God.
Perfect explanation.
Yeah, and so just so everyone knows too, we played this in the episode with Andy. The full clip that Shabir's team posted is in that. We're gonna cut it down here just a little bit. We're cutting out a little bit of his claims about the miraculousness of the Quran, just for the sake of time. But that's all in the past episode, which we'll link to, and we answer those claims in the past episode as well.
So perfect explanation. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's a good summarization of the complexity of the history. And what I'm going to go through is a couple of things, again, from Muslim sources. So don't take it from me. Take it from the lips or the pens of Muslims. You heard it from the lips of one particular Muslim, a prominent Muslim, who said it's not nearly as simplistic as the questioner made it sound. And the common belief that many Muslims have about how we got the Qur'an we have today. There's a complex history that includes variations and different readings and these kind of things and dialects. So that's the standard tradition, actually. Where Shabir gets that is from the Islamic traditions and Islamic history. So I'm going to give you a couple of things on this. A couple of details he left out because he was being brief. And by the way, we didn't play the entire clip. So just important for you guys to know, we didn't play the entire clip just now of that interaction. We did play the entire thing in our episode with Andy Bannister. So if you want to watch the whole thing, please go back and watch that. But for the sake of brevity and for the sake of response to this question, we edited it down so that we could get to the point here. So the reason why it's complex and the reason why Shabir says the things he says is because the Islamic sources from the hadith, again, trusted hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, and you name it, Tirmidhi, other sources of Islamic history, we get a picture of the Quran's compilation, which is fairly complex. So the stories essentially go like this, is that after Muhammad's death, so before Muhammad's death, there were 4 companions who were considered amongst the best of the memorizers and the reciters of the Qur'an, and who were knowledgeable what the Qur'an said, who were the memorizers of the Qur'an. Those included Ibn Masud, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Ibn Abbas, and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And there's other people who are sometimes included in this list as well. Now, after Muhammad passes away, there are these things called the Ridda Wars. The Ridda Wars are these wars, these battles that are fought. When Muhammad dies, there are certain people who no longer feel either a political or a theological allegiance to Islam. Some leave Islam proper altogether. Some stay Muslims but don't feel compelled to be under sort of an authority, a political authority. It's a complex thing. But the point is, there is this almost civil war within Islam, for lack of a better word, after Muhammad's death. And so many of the memorizers of the Qur'an and the reciters of the Qur'an, the Qur'an, are dying in these battles. And so there is a worry amongst the Muslims, amongst the leadership of the Muslims, that the Qur'an will be lost because many of the memorizers are dying in these battles. And so we have to take the various codexes, the Masahif, the various codexes of the Qur'an that are out there in the world, and standardize them, because we're worried that they're not standard right now. There's different readings, that there's different understandings, there's different text even, and different words in the Qur'an. So Abu Bakr, who is the first Khalifa, or the first chief of the Muslims, at some point comes and talks to somebody about getting comes to Ibn Thabit, Zayd ibn Thabit, about getting a collection of the Qur'an together. And under the Khalifa at the time, Uthman commissions this. It says, yes, go and collect all the Qur'ans from the empire, essentially, from the lands, compare them to a standard codex, the Uthmanic codex, and burn all the rest. So you have these variants that are out there. Whatever is variant, burn it. And they were burned.
Can I ask why did he think he had a standard?
Well, because he was.
Where does that come from?
Because he was among the companions. He was, he was close to Muhammad in some sense, and all this. But there were people who disputed him. Ibn Masud, for example, who was considered one of the closest companions, actually was in disputes with Uthman about a couple of things, not just this whole thing. So he thought he had the codex.
Yeah.
Now, the story I just told you comes from Bukhari and a couple of sources that are really important. Now, I'm getting my hadith references from sunnah.com, sunnah.com. And the reason why I'm going to give you these is because depending on the source you go, whether you go to a book or whatever you go, the citation is different depending on where you go, but the hadith text is the same. So we find the story I just told you about the worry about the people dying, about the collection, the commission for collection under Uthman, and the burning of the manuscripts in Sahih Bukhari in Hadith 4,987, or Book 66, Hadith 9. We also find it in Hadith 4,986, the one right before it, Book 66, Hadith number 8. And again, you go to sunnah.com and you can find that. In Ibn Sa'd's Tabaqat al-Kabir, in volume 2, pages 101 and in pages 444, you find the narration and the history that there were reactions to Uthman's collection of the codices. Muhammad's companions weren't always thrilled with this. Ibn Masud, again, considered one of the most trusted memorizers of the Qur'an, again, found in Hadith 5002 of Bukhari, he didn't think that Zayd's copy, the copy that Zayd came up with, was superior to his own. You find that in Ibn Sa'd's Kitab al-Tabaqat al-Kabir, volume 2, page 444. So you already see that there's even with just Ibn Masud alone, and Ubay ibn Ka'b has a different codex than Zayd does. You already see a dispute happening about what is the original codex and who should be the one whose codex is ascendant, is the proper one, Uthman's or Ibn Masud's or Ubay ibn Ka'b or whoever else. In fact, there's history that Ibn Masud, Ubay ibn Ka'b, and others refused to give their codices to Uthman. And Ibn Masud actually warns the people of Kufa or the people of Iraq, don't give them up. Don't give them up. Hide them, because when you come before Allah, God will see what you have hidden. And if you present what's hidden, and it's a codex of the Qur'an, the Masahif, He will reward you for it because you've kept it safe. So, yeah. We also get some of this story, by the way, from Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif, which is a history book. Now, Ibn Abi Dawud was the son of Abi Dawud, who is a trusted collector of hadith. Now, there are some Muslims who take issue with Kitab al-Masahif because they think that it contains untrustworthy sayings, especially about the Qur'an. But Yasir Qadi, who is a contemporary Muslim commentator, Muslim scholar, he thinks that Kitab al-Masahif is actually an excellent source because of the solidity of the chain of tradition that goes behind the hadith that form the history that Ibn Abi Dawud puts in Kitab al-Masahif. And in that source, in Kitab al-Masahif, there are 19 pages that are spent on the complexity of the collection of the Qur'an, including the disputes that seem to exist between Ibn Masud's codex and Ibn Ka'b's codex. For example, Ibn Masud's codex may not have included 3 chapters of the Qur'an. The Fatiha, which he considered a prayer, not necessarily a text, and possibly the last 2 chapters, which he considered charm incantations that were not necessarily part of the Qur'an. Now, that's debatable, but the point is it's in the hadith itself. And then there's also hadith that suggests that Ubay ibn Ka'b had 2 additional surahs. So whereas Ibn Masud didn't have the 114 we have today, maybe 111, depending on whether it's true or not, but it's at least debatable. Ubay ibn Ka'b may not have had 114. He may have had 116 surahs of the Qur'an. So it's not nearly as uniform as we might think it is. Couple that with one other thing I'll say about the hadith traditions. In At-Tirmidhi, in Hadith 3895, there is a statement that's really, really interesting. From Ubay ibn Ka'b, again, one of the faithful companions of Muhammad, narrated Ubay ibn Ka'b that the messenger of Allah, meaning Muhammad, said to him, "Indeed, Allah has ordered me to recite the Qur'an to you." For whatever reason, God made sure that Muhammad recited the Qur'an to Ubay. And so he recited to him, and he says, "Those who disbelieved were not going to ... It continues on. That's the opening verse to chapter 98 of the Qur'an. And then it says in the hadith, not only did he quote that opening statement of Surah 98, and he recited in it, that's in the actual Arabic, in it, "Indeed, the religion with Allah is that which is Hanafiya, Muslim, not Judaism, nor Christianity, nor Zoroastrianism. Whoever does good, then it shall not be rejected from him." And it goes on, it says, and he recited to him, in other words, Muhammad recited to Ubay ibn Ka'b, quote, "If the son of Adam had a valley of wealth, he would seek a second, and if he had a second, he would seek a third, and nothing fills the belly of the son of Adam except dirt. and Allah pardons those who repent, end quote. That's not in Surah 98. But here's a hadith that at least strongly suggests that Muhammad, when reciting Surah 98, said some things to Ubay ibn Ka'b that weren't in what we have today in Surah 98. And again, you can find this in Tirmidhi, which is one of the trusted sources of hadith collections, in Hadith 3895.
Well, there's it'd be hard to come away from that and say, oh yeah, it was just this nice clean process. His friends got together, they all agreed with each other, they stayed friends, and they said, yep, that's what he said to me. That's what he said to me.
Yeah.
Let's just write that down, and we all agree. And there's only ever been one Qur'an.
Well, there's not even one now.
Yeah.
Right now, we have two texts. I've said this before in other episodes. We have two versions is a word in air quotes, but two texts of the Qur'an called the Warsh text and the Hafs text. The Hafs text is the most common, used by about 95 to 97% of Muslims around the world as the standard Arabic text of the Qur'an. Hafs and Warsh, these two guys, were named after two guys who were readers of the Qur'an, because there were 10 different readings and there were 10 different authorized readers. Hafs and Warsh weren't, by the way, any of those 10. They weren't. They were just students. So that's interesting all by itself.
Yeah.
But the Hafs text emerged in about 796, and the Warsh text emerged in about 812. So we're talking between 164 to 180 years after Muhammad's death do we start to get the text that is standardized. And officially, the Hafs text, which is originally from Kufa, which is in Iraq, gets standardized in Cairo in 1924, and then later ratified again in 1932, which is interesting by itself, because it suggests that the standardized version, where it's considered more the majority thing, is fairly recent. The Warsh text is used by Muslims in North Africa and Western Africa. So it's a decided minority, but it is out there. You can go read it right now online. And the reason why I say that is because there are 5,000 differences between these two Qur'an readings. Most of them are vocalizations based on the vowels. In Arabic, vowels are a little more complicated than they are in English. They don't just stick in the middle of the word. They go above a letter or below a letter, and it kind of changes the active or passive voice. It changes the conjugation and these kind of things. But sometimes there are letters that are just added in certain words. Does it change the meaning of most of these statements? No. It doesn't change the meaning or the doctrinal issues in most of the things between Hafs and Warsh. But sometimes it does change the meaning. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. And here's an example. In Surah 3, verse 146, the verse talks about, it asks how many of the prophets or how many of the devoted fought. And then that's in the original, that's in the Hafs text, I should say. In the Hafs text, it says how many fought. Okay, how many of the devoted fought. And the word is qatila. Qatila, so it's qaf, Aleph, ta, lam. So the Aleph is a letter that sticks up from the qaf. It goes from it. Qatila means fought in the past. In the Warsh text, it's different. It says qutila. How many qutila? How many were killed? Now, fought and being killed mean different things.
Right.
They're not the same word. Now, you can rationalize and say fought and were killed, but the Warsh text, go look it up, says kutila, not qatila, and it looks different in the text as well. In chapter 4, verse 5, the word is in the Hafs text says qiyaman. Qiyaman means or is a means of support. Qiyaman is in the Warsh text is values or like a maintenance, like it's something that's valued, but it's not a means of support. It's a different meaning altogether. The one that I think is really important, there's two more I'll share that are important. In the Hafs text, in chapter 7, verse 57, which is in the Warsh text, chapter 7, verse 56, I believe, the word is bushran. Bushran means like good tidings. In the Warsh text, it's nushran, meaning spreading or spreading the word. And that's a different root. That's a different meaning altogether. This also happens, by the way, in chapter 25, verse 48 of the Quran. There's a difference there in that word, bushran and nushran. And that's important. Now, it's because of the dots, the dot placement. In Arabic, the B is like a half, it's like a hook laying on its side with a dot underneath it. And the N sound is the same shape with a dot above it. And then Warsh just simply put the dot above, but it changes the meaning of the text.
Yeah.
And then the last one I want to share is in Surah 43 or chapter 43, verse 19. The word that's important in the Hafs text is Abdu, which is the servant of. This is where my name derives from. In the Warsh text, it's the same shape, but where you put the dot changes the entire meaning. It's inda, which means with. So one means servant of, another one means with. And that is a fundamentally different meaning there. So right now, we have Qur'ans with slight variations. Does that disprove the Qur'an in some way? No, it doesn't. What it does is it disproves the simplistic claim that Muslims make about how they understand their Qur'an to have been compiled. It doesn't mean it's false. It just means this claim that there is this simple story and it's been preserved in every dot and every letter and every stroke of the pen, that's simply not true.
Well, all this reminds me of something I read several years ago now from something that John Gilchrist wrote, who has a lot of great stuff on the Answering Islam.
Yeah.
So answering-islam.org.
Yeah.
And it's in his book. He wrote one, I don't know how to pronounce Here, I'll give you a shot. What's that?
Jami' al-Quran.
Yes, exactly. The codification of the Quran text. And he quoted this early Muslim leader, I think. But he's saying he says here, there is in fact a virtually unanimous opinion among the early historians of the Quran, or among the early historians, that the Quran as it stands is incomplete. Abdullah ibn Umar in the early days of Islam was quite emphatic about this. This is Muhammad's brother-in-law and one of his companions. And he said, let none of you say, I have acquired the whole of the Quran. How does he know what all of it is when much of the Quran has disappeared? Rather, let him say, I have acquired what has survived.
Yeah.
So again, it's all in that early history. But I want to mention a couple other things and just bring up a couple other sort of quick things to think about when we make these arguments, when we think about this. First, there's also some technology has advanced that's allowed us to see also some other differences, that you can now look at a text, and sometimes on these ancient manuscripts, they would erase what was there before and put something on top of it.
Yeah.
But now, through certain types of imaging, you can see what was written first before the latest layer of text is on it. And they have found other readings of the Quran on those.
Yes.
As well.
So it's called, the fancy word is palimpsest, right?
Yeah.
So you can, through the various technologies, see that there was a Quran that's underneath, or there's a page that was with Quranic writing on it, and then that was washed off to be reused again, and another writing of the Quran was on top of it, and you see differences between those. You see these differences. The Sana manuscripts, which are some of the oldest in the world, the Quran actually have these palimpsests and these differences in the Quran. So we see it. We're getting contemporary evidence for this all the time.
Yeah.
The point here is, as my friend, the late great scholar of Quranic manuscripts and orthography, Keith Small, out of Oxford University, said, holy books have a history. Whether it's the Quran or the Bible, they have a history.
Yeah.
And this is the important part here, is that oftentimes the standard polemic against Christianity by the Muslim is that the text of the New Testament or the Old Testament, or put them together, have been changed.
Right.
And that's what the variants that Bart Ehrman makes so popular are all about. Look at all the variants and all these things. And that proves that it's not from God. We have a Qur'an that's in contrast,
Right.
this perfectly preserved, simple story. The point here we're trying to make is that you don't have a simple story. If you're a Muslim, the story you have about the Qur'an is not simple. It has the same kind of history you'd expect it to have, whether it's from God or not, if people were involved in the process.
Right.
So we have this, and it's complex even to this day. So when you use an argument like the Bible has variants, or the scribes didn't copy it down perfectly, or someone added their opinion, or there were different people who were rising to ascension in power and all that stuff, remember, you have the exact same story. So if you use that as an attack against the Christian faith and against the Bible, you're playing with a double-edged sword that will cut you too.
Right.
But here's the good news for everybody. That story doesn't disprove the contents of your book. It just disproves the tradition you have about your book if you have a simplistic fundamentalist understanding of your book.
Right.
If you have a more nuanced version of it, now we can talk about what did God preserve?
Yeah.
And did what God preserved conform to reality as we know it? And if it does, that's one thing. But let's put away this argument that this story is sublime and perfect and blameless, and this story has blemishes. They both have bumpy roads.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, as we predicted, we went way too long. So we're going to cut this one episode into 2 episodes. So come back, join us in 2 weeks for the remainder of the questions that we were asked for this particular Q&A episode. They are great. You're going to hear about emotions, why young people die, the law. There's going to be a lot of good stuff there. So join us in a couple weeks.